Hi, I'm Greg Germer, and this is the Weekly Ronde. What is the Weekly Ronde? Well, it's my little news program that takes tidbits, news, and insights from around the cycling world and condenses it all into one program here on YouTube. And with that, let's begin the Weekly Ronde. All right, so how do we start off the week? Well, first off, let's start with the World Cup. Cyclocross is not coming, cyclocross is here. The first World Cup started in Las Vegas on Wednesday. Great race, won by Wout van Aert. Well, what can we say? Wout stole the show. Not only did he win the race, he crashed about midway through, ended up breaking a toe, hurting his hip, and generally looked out of the race. But then got back up on his bike, came from around the 20s or so, and just caught the leaders and kept on going. He is on track to match his 20 wins from last year and could possibly even beat Sven Nys in the amount of wins for a season. The most noteworthy performance of the day definitely has to go to 17th placed Michael van der Ham out of Canada. He was the top placed North American rider of the day, and based off of his results from last year to now the 17th at the World Cup, that is a huge improvement for this rider. I'm really looking forward to what he's going to be able to do later on in the year. Second, it confirms the form that we saw last week in the Trek Cyclocross Cup wasn't just a fluke. So, on the women's side in Vegas, that, I must say, was one of the best races to start the year with. A highly competitive field, lots of women duking it out at the very beginning, but in the end it was Katarina Nash, Katie Compton, and Sophie de Boer that took the lead. More than that, it was Katie Compton and Katarina Nash just going after each other the whole time, one attack right after another, and really pushing the pace and making each rider ride to their limit. Sophie de Boer, especially in the last lap, was just getting gapped every so often, and in truth, I'm watching it and thinking, okay, this is definitely it for her. But what happened? Sophie de Boer, she caught back on to Katarina Nash and Katie Compton, and then, well, it being Vegas, she gambled. She threw out everything she had in the final 200 meters of the course, especially with the set of barriers right before the final right-hand corner. And what was she able to do? She was able to hold off both those riders to the line. It was an impressive bit of riding, but Sophie de Boer was not the only strong rider of the day. For me, the strongest rider of the day was definitely Rebecca Fahringer. She, in 6th place, shows a huge improvement over last year, and is definitely going to be a name to contend with on the North American circuit. But we will be seeing Rebecca Fahringer over in Europe for some of the World Cups, so it'll be very interesting to see how she fares in the European races versus the North American courses and racing. After Vegas, we have the 3 days of racing out at Jingle Cross. Friday saw Marcel Mason and Helen Wyman take the wins in the C2. But let's face it, everybody was waiting for the World Cup. Saturday's World Cup, just a few short days from Vegas, it was a really big unknown for how a lot of the European riders were going to be able to fare with that sort of travel. Something the North American riders, well, are really quite used to and dealing with. And with that, we found, despite Wout van Aert's broken toe, it was again the Wout show. Not even a slipped chain early in the race that again sent him further back in the field, not quite as bad as Vegas, but still put him at a deficit, was able to stop him from being at the front. What can you say? That was another amazing ride, a very strong showing, and his 4th win of the year. And we just haven't even hit October yet. So with that, he is definitely on track to exceed his 20 wins from last year. For me, definitely the ride of the day, though, went to 10th place Stephen Hyde. The American rider showed some very good form last year, especially at the Zolder World Cup. He was in the top lead, he had a flat, and then he went back. But with his 10th place this year in the Iowa World Cup, he's shown his come to fruition as a rider to be dealt with. Not just at a national level within North America, but at an international level at the World Cup level. Stephen is a older rider at 28, but still, he's not been in the sport that long. So we keep seeing progression every year from him, and the real question is starting to become, where is his top end? And right now, nobody knows. And if he keeps going, he's going to be able to compete with the best in the world every weekend. On to the women's side. Well, let's just say this race had more than its fair share of controversy, well, not within the race, but because of the race. It only ended up being 4 laps long and 37 minutes. The rules state the race has to be between 40 minutes and 50 minutes. So someone somewhere along the line messed up. Now, given that the race was in 27-degree heat, some argued that it's possible that they shortened the race due to the heat and it wasn't quite normal for a race. But on the other hand, the men's race did go the full distance at over an hour. So with that, somebody down the line at the UCI didn't do their job. Despite the short race, it was Katie Compton taking the win over Katarina Nash. What we are seeing this year is not the Katie Compton of old. The word on the street is Katie has been able to figure out exactly what has been nagging at her over all these last years. It is apparently a combination of a dietary change that has led to a whole new way of stopping folic acid. And she's associated this with her fatigue levels and cramping, and even partly to her asthma problems she's experienced in the past. And with this, she said that she's seen some of the highest power numbers she's ever had, and her results this weekend and on Wednesday actually back that up quite well. Following up her win on Sunday, Katie Antonou was able to take her second World Cup podium of her career in Iowa. Another great rising star of the women's cyclocross field, and a very good result for her. And because we needed just a smidge more cross racing this week, the C1 event on this Sunday had David Vanderpool winning the men and Katarina Nash winning the women's. Both very good performances, some nice UCI points for each of them. But for me, the race of the day was second place Ellen Noble in the women's field. It was a definitively better result than she's seen in the past. It is, I think, one of her top C1 results, especially against Katarina Nash. And it just shows a maturing and improving rider. With all that cyclocross action, it's actually really easy to forget we haven't even had the World Championships yet. And with that, I'm going to post down below a comprehensive list of all the different start lists from all the different national teams as we approach that. And in the build-up, the Inico Tour. It was let's say, a tumultuous event with the riders' lead changing from one day to the next, and really culminating in a wonderfully done 7th stage. Racing was defined by wind and rain, and well, it looked a lot more like a early spring classic than a fall classic. The peloton was completely shattered, and you can see it in the video of everybody deciding, hey, let's just jump up onto the sidewalk because, well, that's what we do here in Belgium, because unfortunately the UCI does have rules against this, but really nobody was going to enforce a violation of this size. It's one of those cases where you actually have a rule, but you can't really enforce it when it gets broken in a race because you're going to eliminate half the field. It's something that the UCI is either going to have to just say, okay, this thing happens, and when it happens by enough, we're going to let them do it, or they're going to actually have to enforce it once, maybe a couple times before it actually changes behavior within the peloton. The real winner of the day, though, was Peter Sagan with 3rd place. That 3rd place secured him the overall title of the World Tour, and really has secured what has been an amazing year for the world champion. But really, this is definitely no case of the World Championship curse. All right, this week has actually been quite short for news. There hasn't been a lot, and truthfully, the biggest 2 things that I found that were kind of interesting was we had the retirement announcement of Mary Abbott. After a long and wonderful career, she's going to be hanging up her bike. And then we also had Thomas Voeckler announcing his retirement. Well, not necessarily a retirement, but an early retirement announcement. He will still continue into 2017, but the Tour de France will be his final race of his career. Me personally, he has been one of the most prolific, attacking, dynamic riders of the last century. I have enjoyed his racing style. He is a man of 1,000 pain faces. He will definitely be sorely missed in the peloton. All right, that's been the Weekly Ronde. I'm Greg Germer, and I'll see you next week.